All right, we're back here in the bonus round for our final segment with Michael Pachter, Jason Rubin, and Seamus Blackley. We've been having a great conversation all month about all things gaming, which is what the bonus round is all about. Let's turn, though, to publishers. And, you know, everyone online likes to talk about EA, Activision, Ubisoft, THQ, which we lost this year, unfortunately, but Jason was obviously close to that. Let me start with you, Jason, I guess. I mean, what is the state of, you know, the publisher business and the idea of publishers, you know, funding games from developers, whether they're independent or internal studios? Is that healthy? I mean, how are publishers doing right now?
If you're at the top, if you're one of the top 4, say, or 5 publishers, you're doing quite well. The reduction in competition from the not so big has left you with a massive marketplace that doesn't have a lot of choice.
Yep.
I mean, there's great games, but there aren't that many games coming out, and you've basically been able to take those sales.
Yeah.
On the lower end, with the smaller publishers, it's been incredibly difficult, and as you can see with THQ, some of them have struggled and some of them have collapsed already.
Yeah.
But they're shadows of what they once were, and it's been very difficult.
Now, you know, the bonus round, when we had it, so we started it 7 years ago, one of the things we talked about was the idea that there were going to be more and more sequels, you know, to games, because publishers were going to sort of be more risk averse, and we were going to see the same game again and again. We see that increasingly now with, you know, all the publishers producing, you know, a Call of Duty every year, an Assassin's Creed every year. You know, but then we have a GTA that comes out once every 5 years, a massive success. Michael, are we going to see more and more sequels this generation? Is it only going to get worse?
I think that each of the publishers who's still around saved up new IP for this generation. So you've got the Watch Dogs, you've got the Destiny, you've got the Titanfall that are launching. They're not next-gen console exclusive, but they're launching in the next gen.
Yeah.
And I think that the creative people haven't stopped coming up with great ideas. So I actually think you're going to see for the next 3 or 4 years a lot of new IP. Mm-hmm. Then the ones that work are going to get sequel to death because that's just the pattern that works.
Right.
And I need to interject, props to you for turning Saints Row into a full-blown game, because it was a really good game, and I know that
Got a lot of hate for that.
I know that 99% of the smart stuff was done while you were still in charge. So it turned out to be a great game, and
turned out to be a fantastic.
And I was really skeptical. When you said it, I was really skeptical.
Volition is an incredibly talented team, and it should be known that I have to say they have been walking around with a ball and chain on their ankle for years at THQ. And I wish them the best. They're absolutely fantastic, and I would not be surprised if they make a title that becomes a game of the year or something like that, given the ability to do it. Incredible team.
So back to the publisher model.
Yes.
Look, Jason said it well, but there's less competition. The winning formula for the guys who are left is sequel of the same game every year. Take-Two has taken a different approach, and you know they're making a ton of money this year, but they haven't made a lot of money in other years. So we'll see if they get corrupted by their success and they end up doing it. I doubt it, because I don't think the ROCKSTAR guys will do it. But you know the truth is that probably 3/4 of games every year are going to be sequels to old games. And I do think it's a good next few years, because I think we'll get better new IP.
There are sequels and there are sequels. I think Grand Theft Auto is a sequel, but there is so much new, and there are.
When we brought out, brand,
if you go look at, I know this is ancient history, but if you look at Crash 1, Crash 2, Crash 3, we changed the game every time, and we introduced something new, and the sales went up.
Right.
At the same time, Tomb Raider, if you go back that far, if you remember, they just put out more levels, and the sales went down over time. There are ways to do sequels, and there are ways not to do sequels. If you put something fresh into it, we all identify with the characters, the world, whatever it is. We want to play more. The nice thing about interactivity is, unlike a story, it doesn't get boring when it's repetitive. You get better at it. That is what interactivity is. So it's adding those fresh things. I think Grand Theft Auto is a perfect example of a sequel done right.
And I actually think Assassin's Creed, especially these last 2 iterations, they've changed up the world. You're in a different period, and it resonates with consumers. So, yeah, I think if you do it right, you do it right.
Said, though, that a lot of gamers get down on sequelitis and the fact that all these sequels are coming out and blah blah blah. It's killing innovation. In some ways, you're right. There are bad sequels. It's disappointing. It sucks when there's nothing to play and you go to the store and it's all sequels. But at the same time, you got to remember that's the revenue safety net that lets the people in charge feel comfortable taking bets on new stuff.
Right.
And anybody who's worked in a big company knows how conservative management can be when there's no cash around. So God bless them for doing the sequels, because that then is the reason that one day in one greenlight meeting, some crazy new team with a crazy idea actually gets the money to do something cool that may grow into the next big franchise.
It's not
That's
that
the engine
different
that
in
does
film.
it.
If you look at the summers, most of the blockbusters are threes and up.
But they
some
support
cases.
the cool, more creative art house films that come out at Christmas or something like that. Now, we talk about publishing, this generation.
For the new Rocky, by the way, since we were talking about
What are they on? 8, 7? I think they
No,
stopped.
Rocky in a wheelchair.
They've abandoned the numbers.
Numbers
They're on
and subtitles.
Balboa.
Exactly. Rocky Balboa, the subtitles. Let's talk about the idea of who publishers are these days, because this past generation we've always talked about EA, Ubisoft, Activision, but now you see folks like Riot, you see World of Tanks.
It's weird. It feels really old school to be talking about EA and Activision. It's
But
like,
because
I'm trapped in the past. I think those are the
and there are
publishers.
all these new companies that are doing really cool, interesting things, and I don't think they're publicly sort of recognized for how innovative their business models. And as you said, you look at some of the valuations on some of these companies in the mobile tablet space. Are those guys going to become the new kings? Are they going to become the folks who then can transition their business over to the console space as well as tablet? I want to get maybe Shane.
Well, let's think about what a publisher does.
Right.
Okay, and I think there's a lot of I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding. Right. A publisher is a source of cash. Right. In the past, it had been a source of ability to manufacture physical goods and get them into stores.
Right.
It's a huge deal. Like, no developer can actually do that. So that, I think, of all the things that a publisher can do, you can imagine a developer raising money.
Right.
You've done it. We've all done it. You can imagine a developer getting a game ready and going through tests and getting it set so that the bits are literally ready to go. But you can never imagine a developer hanging out in the garage, with some exceptions, making 4 million copies of a DVD and somehow getting them into the retail channel at Best Buy. So publishers did that, and they existed because, and we mentioned this a couple of sessions ago. They did this because there was a moment in time at which the economy required that there be, a business unit like this that could do financing and could, put these products out, because the cost of making the software went past the point where, and this is what happened before publishers, guys would put their game on a disc and drive around to local software stores with it in a baggie, and a lot of people made a lot of money. Origin Systems started out that way. Ken and Roberta Williams started out that with Sierra Online.
My first game was in a Ziploc.
Sure, and a lot of people who are our age had that experience of driving around or having your mom drive you around, and you try to, give this game that you wrote to some stores, and then it sells and you have $20 and it's crazy. Yeah. When it grew past that, which is a beautiful time, it grew past that, suddenly you needed this operation that could take the financial burden for you and also effectively be your mom driving to every store and and putting it places, not only in the US and then worldwide, and dealing with this stuff. And then that grew into the backbone of the business, okay? And now the world changes underneath that, and maybe doesn't need that anymore in a lot of ways. It doesn't need it maybe in mobile so much. A lot of game developers can self-publish in mobile. There's no reason not to, right? At some point though, the capabilities of the mobile devices will get good enough, the GPUs will be strong enough that they can run a lot of art. Now you have a big art budget. Okay, well now your bet, instead of being $120,000 in 6 months with your friends to make a game, becomes $2 million. Okay, and now you're back at the point where EA started. You're back at this place where the investment is a little bit too big, and the need to make that investment back through advertising, through co-marketing, through making sure that you have customers you keep track of, all of those services that developers traditionally haven't put that into. That's actually very hard culturally to integrate that stuff into a development environment, can be off-put under the right business model to a publisher, and that's where they arose. So it almost seems like when we get to the point in the mobile and tablet space and the emerging indie space where that business model has a vacuum drawing it in again, maybe a new crop of guys will come in.
All right, guys, hold that thought. We're going to be right back here on the bonus round.